Funding for Schaefer-Ellis is provided by
Raycon Earbuds, the sponsor of today's video. Hey guys, it's me, Doctor Strange, that I previously loved the MCU wholeheartedly and now I feel nothing for it anymore because of oversaturation due to all these Disney Plus TV shows coming out at an unprecedented pace. I watched the latest MCU product, What If, and it was okay, I guess. This seemed like a really neat and enticing series going in, and there are definitely some episodes that live up to the hype and manage to be truly great. But for the most part, this first season was a pretty mixed bag. The first episode was extremely uninteresting. I like Peggy, but she's so similar to Steve in terms of her morals and values that making her the super soldier instead of him doesn't actually change the trajectory of the story in any interesting or meaningful ways. All it did was force Red Skull to summon a giant tentacle monster? What? And then Peggy goes through a portal at the end, and then she ends up in the exact same time period where Steve ended up. Wow, what a coincidence. I don't know, this episode wasn't bad, but it really just felt like a lackluster attempt to retell the first Avenger without changing its story in any meaningful ways. I liked Howard Stark in this episode, as well as Steve in a prototype Iron Man suit though, those were neat. I enjoyed episode 2 a lot more, which focused on T'Challa getting picked up by the Ravagers as a kid and becoming the next Star-Lord. It was a far more novel idea, and there were a lot of humorous character interactions in here. I really liked how Korath was just a huge fanboy, T'Challa and Nebula weirdly had a ton of chemistry, it was great to see Yondu again, and the idea that T'Challa talked Thanos out of genocide was kind of hysterical. Completely illogical given everything we know about Thanos, but still, very funny. I've noticed with a lot of these What If episodes, you kinda have to turn your brain off in order to enjoy them and stop thinking about the logical inconsistencies with how certain characters ended up in these alternate universes. And as we'll soon see, I wasn't always able to do that. But with this episode, I didn't really have much of a problem with it. Yeah, they probably made T'Challa way too perfect and capable. I mean, he wasn't perfect in the MCU movies. He made his fair share of mistakes here and there. And the idea that he'd turn out better here when raised by Yondu and not his loving Earth father? Yeah, that's kind of illogical, as is the collector of all characters filling in the evilness void left by Thanos. Logically, this episode really falters, but I honestly had so much fun with it that I didn't really care. And as a tribute to Chadwick, yeah, it's pretty nice. Episode 3 was mildly engaging, though I feel like the what if premise it was built on was kinda shaky and not particularly well defined given this one's setup as a murder mystery, meaning they can't reveal what the change in this universe is right away. Still, I wish there was some sort of build up or clues as to who the final culprit could be. It makes sense in retrospect, and I'm sure something similar probably happened in the comics at some point, but I don't know. I feel like the final reveal kinda came out of nowhere and deflated a bit of this one for me. On top of that, it's just not that distinct visually or character-wise, and it kind of feels like one of the most generic episodes of the show. Again, not bad, just nothing special in my opinion. Though it definitely used Loki in a really creative way, I'll give it that. Alright, now we get to episode 4, and to me, this is where the show really got good. A story about Doctor Strange losing the love of his life and gradually turning to the dark side is so compelling and frightening. This is one of the few episodes of the show that feels really well paced. A lot of them kind of have to rush in order to cram everything into a roughly 30-minute episode. They gotta introduce the differences in this branching timeline, and then use those differences to tell a compelling story on top of it. Some of the episodes falter in this regard, but this one takes a simple premise that doesn't need a lot of introduction and really rolls with this dark story of desperation and anguish. The animation in this one really stands out. Both the 2D animated creatures Strange summons and the fight scene at the end are both really well done. Eggs Benedict Cumberbatch nails the voice acting here, and they go so dark with the ending, which is extremely welcome and somewhat surprising. Yes, this is another episode where you have to suspend your disbelief since Strange is constantly told that Christine's death is an absolute point in time that needs to happen, and yet we know this isn't true because of the main MCU timeline. I guess that's kind of a weird contradiction. Plus, it's also weird how this episode introduces its own time travel jargon that differs from what was established in Loki. It's not a perfect setup, but it's an excellent execution. This episode is well worth watching, even if you haven't seen the other ones. Oh boy, episode 5. This is the one I'm definitely the most mixed on. I had a good time with a lot of it, but it's also got so many flaws that it's really hard to call good overall. So this is the zombies one. I like zombie stories. I like seeing zombies that fully utilize the powers of these superheroes. I like some of the really dark and fucked up concepts here, like Vision kidnapping people and feeding them to zombie Scarlet Witch because he's that far into despair and grief. And I thought some comedy from Peter was pretty okay. okay. Like, yeah, it makes sense that he uses humor to cope in a dangerous situation. It fits his character. Maybe some of it should have been toned down, like that video he made at the beginning was entirely inappropriate, but whatever. At least everyone else isn't making jokes. Oh wait, they are. The comedy in this episode was kinda cringe, not gonna lie. And that's coming from someone who normally doesn't have many complaints with the comedy in the MCU. This episode, however, was Age of Ultron bad in terms of inappropriate comedy. Plus, they picked some weird-ass characters to throw into this group, like why Sharon Carter? Why the Ant-Man comic relief man? And speaking of Ant-Man, if you already have Funny Man Peter Parker, do we also need Funny Man Ant-Man head in a jar? I mean, I liked him in this episode, but it also kind of muddles the Peter-centric storyline. And a lot of my goodwill towards the episode was kind of shot down by the genuinely stupid cliffhanger ending. I guess Thanos got the first 4 stones as usual, and then got zombified when he took the time stone from zombie Doctor Strange, but why is he in Wakanda? What reason does he have to go there when the Mind Stone isn't there yet? Is it because it makes for a cool ending shot? It's because it makes for a cool ending shot. An enticing cliffhanger that will never be resolved and just kind of amounts to an abrupt whatever ending that falls apart when you think about it. This was a complete tonal mess of an episode, but I can't say I disliked it. It had some tension and some fun moments, even if the comedy did take me out of it a lot. Peter and Hope's interactions were kinda nice, and yeah, that's it. I don't know, it was okay.
Peter, I think this is a cape.
If any episode was done particularly dirty by its pacing and runtime constraints, it was episode 6. Such a novel concept, having Killmonger meet and manipulate Tony Stark in order to gain use of his technology. It was so good to have the character back and operating in top form. Like casually outing Obadiah Stane in front of a ton of reporters. That's Killmonger. That line he said to Tony right before killing him, that's Killmonger. The fact that he canonically likes anime, yeah dude, that's him, sure, why not? Such a great character with such an elaborate web of manipulation. It was so neat to see him weasel his way up to the throne of Wakanda and gain both their resources and Stark's, putting him in prime position to take over the whole world. And then the episode ends. No, seriously, it ends just as it's getting really interesting. Pepper and Shuri form an alliance in order to stop him, and then it's over. Where is the rest of the story? It seemed like such a well-paced episode that was taking its time in order to build up to a far more powerful and sinister Killmonger than we got in the original movie. But it just ends before we can see him do anything truly substantial. Yeah, he killed Don Cheadle and friends, but so what? You know how many major characters die in this show? You know how many times Tony Stark has died? This could have been the best episode of the series if they were able to complete the story or were allowed to make it longer than it was. But as is, I just held out hope for a little while that they would pick this story back up in season 2. Anyway, episode 7 was extremely whatever. It wasn't bad, but it's just the irresponsible kid throwing a party story you've seen a million times, but this time it's Thor. I liked his interactions with Loki in this one. It's kind of funny how close they became by just not living with each other. I hate Darcy, but it was funny when she hooked up with Howard the Duck. Korg and Jeff Goldblum showed up, and I like them, so that's cool. Why is Captain Marvel in this one? You're telling me Thor throwing a party is a Captain Marvel level threat, but the stuff that happened in the first Avengers movie or Age of Ultron wasn't? This episode retroactively made those movies make less sense, but that's more so the fault of the MCU shoehorning this character in and pretending she existed the whole time in general. Overall, it's whatever. Kind of fun, but Thor is kind of douchey and not fun to watch at times. Episode 8. Okay, this is where things got really good again. This is a really tense, really exciting, holy shit episode where Ultron gets all the Infinity Stones and becomes so powerful that he can break the multiverse and fight the Watcher. Meanwhile, Natasha and Clint figure out they can beat him by using the Armanzola computer program to take out his computer program. That's kind of clever. I don't really have much to say about this one. It's just a really strong episode with little to complain about. It kind of left a bad taste in my mouth at the beginning when Ultron effortlessly sliced Thanos in half. Fellas, I've seen Infinity War, and I don't really think Thanos with 5 Infinity Stones would be defeated that easily. Kinda felt like they were just making that shit up to rush the premise along. I mean, according to the show, it's actually extremely easy to beat Thanos, and Strange was probably lying out of his ass when he said there was only one way to do it. He just wanted to have the option that would get Tony killed because of the pissing contest they were having. That's my headcanon anyway. Overall, a great penultimate episode that turned out to be the start of a 2-parter. Let's see how it ends. Oh no! Episode 9 was underwhelming to say the least. To me, Ultron never did anything nearly as crazy or powerful as he did in the previous episode, and it felt like it wasn't really that challenging to beat him. The concept of bringing everyone from the previous episodes back was kinda novel, but didn't really amount to any particularly interesting interactions. Overall, I felt like this was a really weak follow-up to the previous banger episode, but as a follow-up to the rest of the season's episodes, it's even worse, and it kind of retroactively makes those episodes a bit worse. The Doctor Strange episode ended with the Mad Doctor realizing he f***ed up and feeling repented as he was trapped in a small empty void for all eternity. But that doesn't mean he should ever fully go back to his original semi-upbeat normal Doctor Strange persona, right? Well, f*** you, he's normal Doctor Strange again, just with an evil looking design and a bunch of tentacle creatures inside him. This experience apparently didn't significantly alter his personality that much in the end. Okay, sure. This episode's absolute biggest crime, however, is how dirty they do Killmonger. Looks like we're never getting that follow-up to his episode I hoped for, cause he's ripped out of his timeline and placed here, where it's immediately obvious the entire time that he's gonna betray everyone and take the Infinity Stones. It's so obvious that the Watcher knew it was gonna happen and planned all of this so he could trap Zola and Killmonger in some sort of time void. Which, like, first of all, the reason the previous episode had tension was because the omnipotent Watcher didn't see Ultron coming. It was a shocking, status quo shattering, succinctly setting up a salacious showdown. Why did I willingly give myself a tongue twister knowing I would have to record this later? But in this episode, the Watcher suddenly just knew they were gonna win the whole time, so all the tension is immediately gone. And don't even get me started on Killmonger. You give him the Infinity Stones and then you don't let him do anything with them? You make it so we can never follow up his story when it was the most enticing what-if scenario out of all of them? Seriously? This episode was kind of a mess in my opinion, and it bummed me out by retroactively making some of the previous episodes worse. Also, why is Gamora? Did they forget to air her episode? Apparently it was an episode that got delayed until season 2, which, like, couldn't we have gotten this now instead of Party Thor? That's the thing about What If. It always feels like it should be better and crazier than it is. Some of the concepts they tackle are incredibly safe and boring, and some of the cooler concepts are undermined by a lack of internal logic backing them up, as well as some poor pacing decisions and pesky short runtimes that don't allow for these stories to be as fleshed out as they could be. It's not a bad series, the animation is decent and a lot of the fight scenes are pretty solid. The returning voice actors are great to hear, with Michael B. Jordan and Banana Mania Carpenter Patch being the biggest standouts. The replacement voice actors do a pretty solid job filling in, and I couldn't even tell that Peter wasn't voiced by Tom Holland in the Zombies episode. Overall, I am interested in what they do next in season 2. Hopefully they can take what worked in this season and really roll with it going forward, while leaving the stuff that didn't work behind. Also, please do more stuff with the Guardians of the Galaxy. I have no idea why they were barely in this. I guess Chris Pratt was too busy eating lots of spaghetti to prepare for his role as Mario. Okay, fair enough. If I had to rank the episodes, I'd say Party Thor is the weakest one. Not awful or anything, but I would literally rather be watching any other concept than this one I've seen a million times. Oh yeah, I just remembered, why does Heimdall never speak in this episode, even when people speak to him? It's really awkward. If you can't get Idris Elba back, just get anyone else to play him. I don't get it. The next weakest is episode 1. Again, a perfectly fine retelling of the first Avenger with Peggy in the lead role. Just not anything particularly interesting or memorable going on here. Next up, episode 9. Maybe I'm being a little unfair. This one had plenty of cool moments and fight scenes, and I liked some bits in the conclusion, like the interaction with Black Widow and the Watcher. It's not bad, but it makes me mad in a lot of ways, and it's nowhere near as good as the one that preceded it. Moving right along to episode 3. I don't have much of an opinion on this one. It's a perfectly decent murder mystery that just could have benefited from actual clues leading up to the murderer reveal. Not terrible, but not impressive. Episode 5 is number 5, baby. I still have no clue if I like this one or not. It's got some high highs and some abysmal lows. But even so, this is the first one of these episodes that I can picture myself watching again, if only for the aforementioned highs. Next up is episode 6, What If Killmonger Rescuing Tony Stark Got an Ending? Do you get it? Because there's no ending. Again, if they fully fleshed out the story, it might have been my number 1. Killmonger is still one of the best MCU antagonists, but this episode only really scratched the surface of why. It really isn't fair. Episode 2 time, y'all. A nonsensical episode, but a really fun one. It's one of the few times in the show I could turn my brain off and still really enjoy something. The runner-up is episode 8, enticing as all hell, and it isn't really brought down by its lackluster follow-up. It feels like much less of an abrupt ending than episodes 5 or 6. So if you really just want to view this episode as a standalone story, you could. A great time all around. And my favorite is episode 4. A simple yet strong hook, a horrific plunge into darkness, good action, great character work, an absolute banger, even if the logistics don't make a ton of sense. I'm torn between a 5 out of 10 or a 6 out of 10 for this series' overall score, though I think I'll probably give it a 6. Its highs were definitely higher, and its lows weren't that much lower than that of Loki's, which I also gave a 6 to, so it only seems fair. Also, I'll watch Shang-Chi when it comes to Disney+. I'm not going to a movie theater to watch a Marvel movie that isn't Spider-Man. Right now I'm busy, I gotta beat Metroid Dread, so leave me alone. Good night, Tri-State Multiverse. But before I go, I have a what-if pitch for you guys. What if you were to purchase Raycon earbuds, the sponsor of today's video? Ho 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 ho, delightfully devilish, Schaffreless. Now, it's been quite a while since I last talked about Raycons, and a ton of great new features have been added since then. The new everyday earbuds have a 32-hour battery life and offer 8 hours of continuous playtime. And they now feature a built-in mic, allowing you to take calls at the press of a button. They also now have an improved rubber oil look and feel. They look incredibly sleek and stylish, and feel absolutely great in your hands. Like, wow, man. Unlike other brands, Raycons don't stick out of your ears, and come with a bunch of optimized gel tips for your comfort and the perfect in-ear fit. Raycons also start at about half the price of other premium audio brands, but they sound just as good. And they come with a 45-day happiness guarantee. If you're not satisfied in that time, you can return them. I love using Raycons to listen to music when I hop on the treadmill or when I'm editing videos. The sound quality they offer in both instances is mwah, chef's kiss. They really help set the mood and immerse me into either activity with their noise isolating capabilities and great quality sound. If you want some for yourself, go to buyraycon.com/Schaffreless to get 15% off your order. Click the link in the description box below. Again, that's buyraycon.com/Schaffreless. Check them out. And thanks to Raycon for sponsoring this video.